comes back and he's like, I went on a date. I went on a date with so-and-so, and starts telling me about how he made out with her on the hood of the car and all of these things that they did on the date. And he was like, I thought you would just be passed out by the pain pills the whole time, so I thought it would be fine.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Just for Today podcast, where we dive deep into uncomfortable topics with zero filters. Today I have Lyndsey here with me. Hi Lyndsey, thank you so much for sitting down with me today and letting me into your home.
Of course, welcome.
I am actually in Utah, and Lyndsey agreed to sit down with me and tell her story. We met a few months ago, I think, on social media. Lyndsey is a survivor of domestic violence, so she is here today to share her story with us. But first, I want to start off, tell us a little bit about your childhood. What was that like?
So I am the oldest of 4 children, and I think that obviously lays the groundwork for just me kind of feeling like I always had to hold it together, but always kind of having a desire to take care of everyone. That was always kind of a role that I was just put into because of me being the oldest. My family was very religious growing up. They still are very religious, so they're active, Mormon, LDS. I don't know what the appropriate term is for them right now because I am no longer an active member for the church. But that was something that was very important in my childhood, and it was just expected of us. Like, that was what we did every Sunday. That was what you did. And I didn't ever really connect with it on an emotional level. I never found that like desire. I don't know. Like, there are some people who talk very strongly about that connection that they felt with a religion or church, and I just never really had that experience. I was always the kid who had to have something to say. I can't keep my mouth shut. My dad would always tell me if you could learn to keep your mouth shut, you'd get in trouble a lot less, which is facts. But I can't. I just, whatever I think, I'm gonna say it.
Yeah.
And I feel like as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at controlling that. But when I was little, you very much knew everything that I thought. But because of that, I felt very misunderstood. I was told a lot that I was dramatic, or I was reading too much into things, or just I would want to talk about things that I didn't understand or that bothered me. I met my abuser when I was 16, and I was a sophomore in high school. And I did competitive dance growing up. I would dance like 40 plus hours a week while going to school. And my sisters did the same. It was just something that we all really loved, but it required a very regimented lifestyle, I guess is the best way to say it. And so for my mom, when she would say, clean your room or clean the bathroom, and I didn't do it, her only thing she could punish me with was, I'm not going to take you to dance. And so when I met my abuser, it was really easy for him to pick onto those things that were already struggles in my life, feeling misunderstood by my family or feeling like they didn't really accept or love me, because that was already something that I kind of didn't feel anyways. Not because that they don't love me. I do think that they love me, but I just always felt like I wasn't necessarily the picture of what they thought their child should be, if that makes sense.
Right.
He very quickly took that and ran with it. And because dance, especially, I don't know, other places, obviously I've grown up in Utah, but in Utah specifically, is very competitive. I didn't ever really form super close girl friendships. And so because I was at dance so much, I didn't form them at school either. And so there wasn't that extra hurdle for him to overcome. It was really just my family who I already felt misunderstood by. So that wasn't really a complicated thing for him to face. So very early on, I was like, yeah, he understands me. He understands my emotions. He's going to protect me. He understands me the way that they don't. Really early on in our dating, he shared with me that his birth dad had given up rights to him and his siblings. So he was the youngest of 3 from his birth dad. And when he was like 3 or 4, I want to say it was, is when his birth dad gave up rights and his stepdad adopted him. And I always heard a version of the story that his birth dad they used the word abusive. And now I'm really triggered by that because I'm like, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
And funny enough, I still talk to his birth dad. So I do want to ask him one day, like, what his version of the story was, because the version that I got from my ex-husband and his mom was very much that they were scared of him and that they were in hiding, and then they didn't want him to know where they were, and that he cheated on his mom, and that there was just a lot of emotional turmoil around that relationship.
Do you think that's something he remembers, though, or just something his mom?
I mean, he claims that he remembers things from when he was really little. I have a hard time because I don't remember a
Yeah,
lot from when I'm little. Like,
young.
I have very few memories where I'm like, this is a memory I feel very confident about,
Right.
right? So he claims that he remembers that. I don't know that I necessarily believe that, only because of my own personal experiences in trying to remember my childhood. There's not a lot that stands out to me. But I mean, having your dad give up rights to you, that's pretty
Right.
big. I can see that being impactful.
Right.
But as far as like the abuse and like the affair, there's no way he was old enough to have had any recollection of that himself, I believe. He did say that there was some aggression towards his siblings, but he never really got into detail about that.
Mhm.
And I have never really asked for clarity on that, but it was very much like, I'm scared of this man and I need you to sympathize, but I don't share this with everyone. This is a secret my family holds.
Right.
And that was something that he shared with me so early on. And so when my family started saying, like, something feels weird, something feels off, he had already given me a reason why it felt off.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, well, you guys just don't understand him. Like, you don't understand what he's going through. I do. Right. And so that was so easy to kind of shift that mindset.
So when would you say that started? Like, when did
Very
your
early.
family start saying these things?
Very, very early. They did not like him from the jump. When we were very first supposed to hang out, I was grounded. And that's what that meant. When I was grounded, I didn't go out. And when he asked me, he was like, let's hang out. And I was like, I can't, I'm grounded. And he's like, let me talk to your mom. And I was like, because my mom is the one I'm intimidated by, not my dad. My dad is this big cowboy, rides horses guy that you would assume I was intimidated by him. Absolutely not. It was always my mom.
Yeah.
She was just the one that meant business. She was the one that was home with us. And he was like, no, I want to talk to her. And he convinced her to let me hang out with him that night. And I know that we've talked about it, but I just don't remember what he said. To me, the impactful thing was that he convinced this woman that I was never able to convince anything of
Right.
that we were hanging out.
Right.
And so they just didn't like him. They got a weird vibe, but I was like, no, you guys just don't get it. And I was dead set that we were in love. We were supposed to get married, had other boyfriends, but I'm 16. How serious are your boyfriends, you know? But he had kind of really early into our dating had made me feel like, you have had lots of dating experiences, but I haven't dated a lot of people. And so if we're supposed to be together, I need to go and I need to date other women, but I need you to just wait for me because you've already had that experience and I haven't. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, because again, like growing up religious, I think for me, the only dream I had growing up was be a good wife and a good mom.
Yeah.
That was it. That was the only dream I remember having. I didn't grow up dreaming of a career. I wanted to be a good wife and a mom. And so it wasn't hard for me to let go of all these other things when I thought he's seeing me for this part that no one understands. No one understands what I really want. He really does love me. And I wanted it so bad. I wanted to be understood. I wanted to be loved for who I was and not who someone thought I should be.
Right.
And so I grasped onto it and I just wanted it so bad.
Right.
And I let him date other women. I said, okay. And he eventually came back. And when I go talk to high schools, I think this is one of the funnest reactions that I get because now even telling it makes me want to vomit in my mouth. I remember he came back to me after dating all of these women and he told me about them. Like I would know about these dates. It was not hidden information.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm not physically attracted to you, but I know you're going to take care of me the best. And I was like, I will. I am going to take care of you the best. And I was so happy because I was like, he knows, like, I'm going to take care of him. I will. And I think a lot of the things for me that the church taught me growing up were really detrimental in that because for me, I was taught, your value and your worth comes in the service that you provide to others. The way you show people you love and you care about them is how much you can sacrifice yourself for them and their needs. And I took that to heart. And I sacrificed every part of me to make someone else happy because I believed that that's what love was. I believe that's how I showed someone love. That was kind of just the idea that I had always had because you serve others, you lose yourself in service. Those were all phrases that I had been taught growing up.
So is that something you would say that you learned from a very, very young age going?
Absolutely. And I think too, like there are a lot of times where there's a song, follow the prophet, he knows the way. And it teaches you to kind of ignore your own gut feeling. And it says, follow your husband, he knows the way, he has the priesthood, he's getting all this revelation from God. So trust in him. And those things, I think, when you're with someone that wants to take advantage of that and someone who just really wants to be a good wife and a good mom, that's so easy to manipulate that situation. And it was. But I didn't see it at the time. I didn't think that I never told anyone I was unhappy. I don't know that there was an expectation that was set, but I knew that he wanted me to wake up. So I set the alarm for him to get up to work. My alarm went off for him to wake up to go to work. I was a stay-at-home mom for the first 10 years of our marriage. And when he would get up to go shower, do whatever, I would lay his clothes on the bed and I would go pack his lunch and I would get everything ready for him to walk out the door. And then he would go and I would get the kids up and do all of that stuff. And he would come home to a meal and all of the things, right? That was just how we functioned every single day. I was proud of that. Like, I was proud of how well I managed everything. It never bothered me. I never felt taken advantage of. Like, I was proud that I was such a good wife and I was supporting him so well. And he never made me feel like he was taking advantage of it, but looking back, I can see that it was never anything he appreciated either. And when my family would bring it up, I'd be like, no, he appreciates it. He's so grateful. I like doing it for him.
Yeah.
And I did, but I think I was telling them that so that the questions would stop because I was definitely never getting the validation. But when it would be questioned, I would be like, no, you guys just don't understand.
Right.
And that was always a phrase that I remember using.
Yeah.
And it was always something that they just never really liked him. And that caused a lot of problems. And I think made the isolation from them a lot easier because I was never told you can't hang out with your family. That was never a phrase that was said to me. But I did choose to stop calling them and stop going around because it got so hard to manage the relationship that it was more exhausting for me to do that than it was anything.
Yeah.
And so I just stopped talking to them because in his mind, I've said something to make them mad at him and he doesn't like them. And what have you said that you're not telling me? What did they know? And there were just all of these insecurities and fears that I would have to mitigate that weren't real, but because they didn't like him and accept him the way he thought they should, it was my fault and I needed to fix it. And because they already didn't like him, I'm not going to be like, hey, we're having this big, huge argument. Could you guys please just pull your head out and invite him or whatever? And they're like, we're asking him to do things, but he's not talking to us. What do you want us to do? And it was just this battle that I never felt like I could win. And so I just gave up because he's my person. He's my husband. He's the one I live with. So I'm dealing with him far more than I'm dealing with my mom or my sisters or anyone else that I see in my life. And so it wasn't, I mean, it was hard, but it wasn't if you think about it, because I just never felt supported. It stayed that. He saw that little window and kept that the whole time.
Right. Was there ever a moment that you thought you weren't getting what you were giving? Because I know you mentioned, like you said earlier, like he's not attracted to you physically, but he knows you're going to take care of him, or like there's certain things that you were not getting back in return. Did that ever cross your mind?
I would always go back to that phrase, marriage is hard.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what other marriages look like behind closed doors.
Right.
And my parents never argued in front of me. I never saw disagreements. I never saw really what I believe a relationship is.
Right.
How a relationship functions. I never saw that growing up.
Right.
And so in my mind, I was making up what I thought our relationship should look like.
Right. Well, and then you also mentioned of going to a bishop and him telling you what a relationship should look like.
Yeah. When we were dating, we did end up having sex before we got married, which is that's not okay in the Mormon religion. You're not supposed to do that. Well, and at this point, he still felt like he wanted to go on a mission. And in order to do that, you have to go and repent to your bishop. So he went to his bishop and he was like, this is what we've done. Well, the bishop wanted to meet with both of us, which, I mean, I've heard that happen. I don't know what is normal or what isn't. This is just my experience. So we went into his bishop, and I remember his bishop saying to him, I know you guys have these desires and these urges, and once you guys are married, you can do whatever the other person wants. And he took that phrase and used that against me in such a dark way. More towards the end of our marriage, I would say that it was more dark. In the earlier years, it was more guilt tripping me into having sex with him if I didn't feel like I wanted to. I feel like my relationship with sex was something that was never healthy from the get-go, because in the Mormon religion, sex is bad. You don't do it. You don't do it. You don't do it. And then all of a sudden you get married and one day it's fine. And that is the biggest mind fuck if you think about it. Like, And on top of that, it's a topic that I don't know any parent feels comfortable talking to their kid about. Whether you're religious or you're not, no parent wants to think about their kid having sex. It's not
Right.
comfortable. And so it was a conversation I never had with my parents. And so it was just something that kind of flowed with him. I learned all of these things that I should have had these conversations with my parents. I learned them with him. And I was told, I'm sure that bishop didn't know how that phrase was going to be used against me. I'm sure he had no idea. And so I remember, like, if I was sick or if I was tired, he would say, well, remember the bishop said that we should do what the other person wanted.
So did he ever use it the other way? Like, was it always to his
Oh, yeah.
advantage?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
was it, like, could it ever be to your advantage? Well, the bishop said, so I don't want to do it.
I
Let's not
don't
do it.
know that I even asked,
Okay.
but now looking back, I wouldn't have known it at the time. But now looking back, like having you ask that question, I was so enveloped in taking care of him and his needs and the kids that I wouldn't have even had the ability to let my brain think about a scenario that it would have been turned in my direction.
Right.
There were so many needs that he had that I was, again, I say required to meet because that was just the feeling I had. There was never any like, do this or else.
Yeah.
At this point, he was not physical with me. It was just a feeling that I had.
Yeah. And I know I've spoken to a lot of people where I live in Arizona. There are a lot of Mormons, and I have a lot of friends that have left the church throughout the years that I've lived there, and they also say the same thing. Same thing about sex, same thing about like, it's always about like feeling like it's what your husband wants. It's doing this and it's doing that. So I feel like that's normal. Like
Yeah.
what you're saying is kind of normal in that aspect, which is hard for people that don't grow up in that to understand.
Yes.
Because like my mindset, the first thing I said was, well, why don't you
Yeah.
say that,
Exactly.
But it's not that easy. Like,
No.
that's not.
Well, and I think too, I will say I think that men are more sexually driven just by
Absolutely.
nature.
Yeah.
And I think that when you give two people, a male and a female, and you tell them both sex is bad, sex is bad, sex is bad, and then all of a sudden it's not bad, it's really easy to take this desire and this urge that you have suppressed and pushed down for such a long time and never really figured out how to manage or navigate in a healthy way and then try and figure it out with this other person, not even meaning for it to be negative, but just having it be that way because I think it's like with emotions, right? If I never teach my son how to appropriately handle being angry, then he's gonna go and punch someone in the face.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of goes hand in hand with that. I mean, someone who has those natural desires and urges and then has fought them for such a long time, and then all of a sudden everything's okay.
Yeah.
That's so confusing.
Yeah, and I feel like it's really hard for, I mean, men and women both, but I feel like women especially because you are told to ignore these feelings and all these things, and you're told not to do certain things. And I feel like it's so normal. Like, like we should be able to know our body
Yeah.
and to be able to, like, what if we want to pleasure ourselves?
Yeah.
What if we want to do that? Like, it's not a bad thing.
No, and it shouldn't feel shameful.
Exactly. And
Because
it's
no.
that's the bad thing. That's the thing that I don't like because then it overflows into your marriage. It overflows into all these things. And then you're so uncomfortable where as a woman, you should feel so comfortable in your body
Yes.
and not, I don't know.
Well, another thing I think I realized too is because I never had those relationships with my parents, I never had that initial uncomfortable conversation about sex. It never got that uncomfortable moment out of the way. And so then to have a conversation with your spouse that's uncomfortable because you've never had that uncomfortable moment, it's something that it's easy to avoid.
Yeah.
Why would you speak up? Why would you say
Yeah.
what you like or don't like? How would you even know?
Yeah, how would you know that?
And so I think if you've never faced a hard, uncomfortable conversation with people that love and trust you, like love you fully and don't want to take advantage of you, how are you going to know if another conversation is normal or not normal?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that was something that I didn't realize the importance of until after because I didn't have a gauge of what normal was.
Yeah.
He was telling me what normal was.
Right. So whatever is normal to him is what is now
Yes.
your normal.
Yes.
Right.
And so he obviously did not have a very healthy normal because he wanted to date other women while we were dating and I was supposed to wait for him. And
is he sleeping with these women or?
two of them, I believe that he did. I don't know for sure, but I feel fairly confident that that happened. I think I say that now, and I didn't talk about it for a long time because that's humiliating.
Yeah.
Like, why did I say yes and marry that when I knew he wasn't being faithful to me? And I think part of me felt like I won this prize. I won this prize that I had waited for, that obviously all these other people wanted, but he was picking me. And I won, right? And so my brain was going there, and I didn't like that he was sleeping with other women.
Yeah.
It didn't feel well. And so as our marriage progressed, I remember he told me that he really wanted me to be a sister wife. And I was like, no, that's not really my vibe. And he's like, but it'll be so much help for you. It'll have so much help, and it's fine. Sex is just sex. It's not that big of a deal. And I was like, I just don't think so. Like, it was like, he would push a lot of things. There weren't a lot of things I said no to. I remember, again, sacrificing myself as showing someone that I love them, right? So if I felt like something was uncomfortable or if my feelings were hurt, it felt like I was loving him so much that I didn't bring up something that was going to hurt him. Does that make sense? It was just this fucked up thing that I just kept, and that's why I never brought up anything.
Right.
And so as that progressed and I said no, he came to me. I remember, I don't even know how many. We had 2 kids at this point. So I was with him for a total of 18 years, just to give a gauge of like how long. And we have 3 children together total. So I want to say at this point, we had 2 kids. And he had come to me and he was like, you just don't make me fully happy. It has nothing to do with you. This is a me thing. There's something wrong with me. There's something that's unfulfilled in me. But if you really love me, if you truly love me, then I need to date other women. Because that's how I'm going to feel fulfilled. It has nothing to do with anything. I think it's a sexual thing.
But this is the second time because he had already dated.
He wanted me to be a sister wife.
Okay, but this is not.
We're married at this point.
So, this
so
is
like
after.
before, we were dating. And so like in my mind, I kind of justified it.
Yeah.
But like now.
So now he wants. Okay.
And I have 2 kids.
Yeah.
And this phrase of marriage is hard is running through my mind. And divorce is not an option. In the church, divorce is not something that you do. You don't resort to that. There are so many other things you try before divorce. And I don't think that that's necessarily bad. But I don't think that I should have stayed as long as I did.
Yeah.
And so, again, every time things would get kind of bad, I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what happens behind closed doors with other people. Like, and I feel like I was ashamed at this point. I didn't want my family to break up. And in my immediate circle, there had only been 2 divorces, and they were both really toxic and really negative, especially because I had a hard time with the mindset of hating the other person. It was both my uncles that divorced my aunts. So the uncles are my blood relatives, and I was always much closer to my aunts. I was. They had children with these women. One was on my dad's side, one was on my mom's side. But when these divorces happened, all of my family members were so angry and so toxic and so mean towards these women. And I don't know the decisions that they made. It didn't matter to me. It wasn't my marriage. It wasn't my relationship. They were always kind to me. I knew that they were still my cousin's parents.
Right.
So I could never wrap my head around hating them. But there were a lot of people that were very emotionally invested in that. And I got a lot of hate for wanting to maintain those relationships. And so because I had only ever seen these really scary, toxic, negative divorces, where like the kids are going back and forth, but I can see they're sad and they're upset and they're hearing all these bad things about their mom, and that didn't look safe.
Yeah. So you're like, I can't do that.
No. And so I was like, no, it was never even an option that crossed my mind. Not one time. I said, okay. I let him date other women. I was like, okay. And so one story that I tell, because I think it's one of my most memorable moments, I had to get my tonsils removed for the 2nd time as an adult, which I think should be outlawed.
Oh my God, don't tell me that, because I want to get mine removed so bad.
It sucks. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was so awful.
Sorry, side
no,
but
it was awful. Do it. # worth it. I got tonsil stones. Awful. It's awful to deal with. It feels uncomfortable. It feels disgusting.
24/7.
Yes,
I hate it.
It's awful. And people don't understand. It's worth it, but it was hard. He takes me for same-day surgery. Our children had both had their tonsils removed, one 2 weeks prior, one the week prior. Kids bounce back. That one wasn't so bad, but like I was going the following week. So they need some attention. He takes me to get my tonsils removed, the same-day surgery. He brings me home and leaves and is gone all night long. and comes back and he's like, I went on a date. I went on a date with so and so, and starts telling me about how he made out with her on the hood of the car and all of these things that they did on the date. And I was like, I just had my tonsils, like I was in so much pain. And he was like, I thought you would just be passed out by the pain pills the whole time, so I thought it would be fine. Again, why am I going to tell this story in the moment?
Right.
I can't call anyone in my family and be like, my husband's going on a date. Can you come take care of me?
Right.
And I said yes to this. I agreed to it. Even in that moment, I would not have told you I was in an abusive marriage. I would not have said I was unhappy. I think internally I knew I was unhappy, but I would not have said that out loud.
Well, I think the manipulation at this point and the control is just like so beyond you.
Next level.
And I think, unfortunately, it was going on way before you even met him.
Absolutely.
So it was just like a...
Well, that's the thing. I think that you can have all of the tendencies and characteristics that he has as a human, and I don't think that you necessarily are a bad human. I remember watching him sell things, and it was mesmerizing. It was the most amazing thing I had ever seen in my life, because he could walk someone to a decision. Like, he would tell me, I want this person to buy this. He worked for T-Mobile. He worked for corporate T-Mobile. And I would go sit in there, and you would get extra rewards for selling certain things. All companies do that. So he's like, no, I'm going to go sell them this. And you would watch it, and you would have no idea what he was doing. And had he not told me what he was doing, I would not have known. And every time they would do it. It was incredible. Still to this day, I can say that I am mesmerized by that talent he has. It is something that was always something he had. So one thing I didn't say, he was debate president for our high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so throughout our marriage, he would always say, I knew you were right the whole time. I just had to win. And I remember thinking, I can't be mad. That was something that I was drawn to. That was something that attracted me to him. So how can I be mad that he's just doing what his body knows? That's just his nature.
Yeah.
And so, like, he was always that way.
Yeah.
But it was never something that I saw directed to me, and it was always to other people. And so I never thought
anything bad of it.
Or that it ever would be turned to me. Ever. And even when he would subtly do it, I didn't see it.
Yeah. So how long are you married at this point when you get your tonsils removed and this situation happens?
I would say, so we were married in 2006, and I would say this was probably 2014-ish.
Okay.
Because I know my son was like old enough that he had gotten his tonsils out, but I hadn't had my youngest yet. I remember he wanted another baby, but I couldn't really understand why he wanted another baby. But for me, like, that was kind of where I found my purpose, was my kids.
Right.
And so that wasn't hard. Like, it was easy for me to be like, okay,
I can relate to that.
yeah, well, that's fine. Like, I think it was easier for me to lose myself in my kids and not focus on being unhappy, if you will, because again, my body, I think, knew I was unhappy.
Yeah.
But vocally, I would have never said it to anyone, or even out loud, because I don't think I wanted to admit it even to myself. And so I think it was easy for me to have something else that I was just okay doing, because I love my kids.
Yeah. And at this point, are you guys like around family? Like, do you live around your family, around his family?
We always lived close to everybody.
Okay. But are you around them?
Not often.
Okay.
We had more contact with his family than we did mine. His birth dad was not in his life for a really long time, kind of came in and out of the picture very briefly. And then when I was pregnant with my son, we had, I think it was probably maybe a year where we had contact with him, and we would see them a little bit, but that really, really bothered his mom. And his mom had helped us a lot. My ex-husband was not one that was very motivated to care for people outside of himself, but I did not see that. He didn't have a problem with people doing things for him.
Right.
So when his mom wanted to give us furniture or do things and he didn't have to work for it, he was all for that. And I was just grateful. Like, I just needed things for my baby. So again, it didn't really matter to me, but I could see, like, looking back, I can see I don't like that. I want someone that is grateful for it, but is also willing to work for it, because I think someone who just wants to take from everybody is not a very healthy human.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have noticed those things, but I was 16 or 20, 25. Even then, like, what do you know? You know?
Yeah.
I know that him and his mom were always very close. His mom and I were really close. I would talk to her whenever I would have problems with him. She was my go-to, because in my mind, she's always going to love him. No matter what I say to her, that's her baby. So I can tell her the worst thing in the entire world. She's always going to take his side, and she's always going to love him. I just need to tell someone, and I need someone to, like, talk it through with almost, but I didn't want him to feel betrayed because he was very tight-lipped about things. In that time, if I was gonna say I was closer to anyone, it would probably be his mom, but then when things started going downhill after I started, like, saying no, like, after he got arrested, she completely cut ties, and I have not seen or spoken to her since his first arrest, I think.
So would you call her though and tell her these things? Like, like
Not currently. I have asked my kids if they wanted they are pretty close to her,
okay.
and I have asked them multiple times, like, "Do you want to meet up with her?" I have her phone number. I know where she lives. We have been down where she lives multiple times, and I have asked them, like, "Do you want me to call her? Do you want to meet up at a park or something?" Like, I've tried to make it safe and neutral, if you will. But I think because of how they supported him, they feel too betrayed by it, and I will never push that. I feel like as a grandma, I don't know that I could have not had any contact, and I think that says something.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
my mom, I don't think she could have just not sent any cards or anything, had no contact whatsoever,
Yeah.
and not tried at all, especially living in the same state.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that says a lot,
Yeah.
and I will never push that relationship,
Yeah.
so I just kind of leave it.
Yeah.
But it is hard because, again, it feels like you were my mother-in-law for almost 2 decades.
Yeah.
Like, how do you just and I get loving your son, but part of me wonders if she has not accepted what happened,
Yeah.
or if I don't know, she didn't go to jury trial. Well, jury trial was during COVID. We had in person, we were there. But so we had the jury, we had him and his attorney, me and the prosecutor and my victim's advocate, and those are the only people allowed in the courtroom. So other people were allowed to join via Zoom. I had, like, some of my family at that point I was back in contact with, and they were watching, but I know so my ex is now remarried. His girlfriend at the time was not on, and I know his mom was not on. And so part of me wonders if that was to maintain his narrative, because his narrative is still that he didn't do it. I ruined his life, I made it all up, and that his attorney failed, and that he really wasn't guilty, and that I ruined his life. And so part of me wonders if it was just to maintain that narrative, because all the people in his life now are new people.
Yeah.
There's not any
From before, from the past.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And so I wonder if
That's why.
Mm.
So how long were you guys together before it got to physical abuse?
So the first time, and I don't know exact date, every time he would get mad, he would take my phone and wipe it. So, like, all pictures of my babies, all pictures of everything would be gone. Every time he would get mad and be scared that I would tell someone something, he would be afraid that I took pictures and I would be hiding them somewhere, so he'd wipe my phone. And
It's
so
severe mental abuse
all the
at this
time.
point.
Yes. And, like, I just remember constantly questioning everything I was doing. I wasn't talking to a lot of people. And
Mhm.
so just every decision I was making felt very unsure. And I had ignored my own gut feeling for such a long time that I really wasn't getting a gut feeling anymore. I was just kind of navigating through life the best that I could assume to do things, because I would make decisions and it would make him mad, or I wouldn't make decisions and it would make him mad, or there were just so many things, and it was either yelling and very aggressive, or very, like, silent treatment. I'm not talking to you, but in such a way that it made me feel so insecure and so, I don't even know, unsafe.
Yeah.
But I don't even know how he did it, because there were no words. It was just eerie, if that makes sense. And so it was just a lot of that. But one picture that I do have, there was a video of my daughter that was dancing around, and he had to have missed it or something. But you can see behind her that there's a hole in the wall. And that was like September 12th, 2019, or something like that. And that was the first time that I remember him getting physical in our home. I remember that we were arguing about sending his girlfriend money in jail.
What?
Yeah.
When that whole sister-wife thing happened, that continued?
Well, I mean, he always wanted it to be a thing.
Okay.
This girl specifically, I try to be really careful when I talk about her. She is his now wife.
Okay. And this is the girl he's sending money to. This is the fight. Okay.
She kind of followed us our whole entire marriage.
Okay.
So when they got together, it wasn't shocking to me. He got her multiple jobs. She had problems with drugs. She had 2 daughters. And her second daughter's dad overdosed and passed away.
Okay.
And in this time frame, he was still very close to her. He was someone that they were talking to. The same bishop that told me that once we were married, we could do whatever the other person wants, also told him that this girl, he always needed to be in her life because the God told him he needed to be her support. They grew up in the same ward together. And so throughout our marriage, whenever I would say, like, I don't like this, like, this makes me feel uncomfortable, I'm insecure about her, like, straight up, it just didn't feel good, right? I knew
Yeah.
he had tried to date her before, we were married, and he was like, no, the bishop told me I needed to look out for her, so that's what I need to do. That's what God needs me to do. And who am I to question it? Who am I to question God? And so I just was like, okay. And so it did escalate. It got worse and worse. But like over the years, so at this point, she was in jail. I don't know all the details behind that, but he had told me like her family cut her off. She has no one. She needs money in jail. Well, we couldn't even pay our bills at this point. And so I was like, we can't. Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm done. And I remember I was like, I'm leaving. And he got mad and he punched a hole in the wall. And that was the first time he got physical, and I remember I was so shocked and just I didn't know what to do. I don't know that I was even leaving. I think I was just done being compared to someone else. Like, it wasn't a life I wanted. But when I said no, that got even scarier. And so, the first time he got physical with me was October 31st, 2019. So it was probably about a month and a half later that it transitioned from being physical in our home to being physical with me. He was always very mentally unstable. And during this first interaction, I remember I was at work. So he had lost his job in January 2019, and he had been the only one working. So I was a stay-at-home mom, and he had decided, like, I'm done. This was too much. It's your time. You can go get a job now and take care of our family. And I was like, what
Okay.
world are you living in? Like, I was willing, but like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go make the money you're making
Yeah.
to take care of our family. I will do it, but it's not gonna happen. And so I was trying to work, and I could tell he was really depressed. He was just not, and there was nothing I was gonna say to change it. And so I was working, and I remember coming home and no one was home, and I didn't know where he was, and that made me feel really uneasy, and I didn't know where the kids were. And when he got home, he could tell I was anxious. And he went into our bedroom, and in our closet, he had like a little gun safe, and we had a lot of guns in the house. He was a hunter, and so he pulled a handgun out of the safe, and he turned around and he held it to the side of his head, and he looked at me and he goes, "If you really feel like I do nothing as a husband and a father, I'll pull the trigger right now." I remember being scared of like anything my face did, or like any body reaction I had, or like saying the wrong word, or I don't know, like I
Yeah,
didn't.
you don't know what can trigger him to pulling the trigger.
Yeah,
Right. You
and
don't
I
know
didn't
what.
know if he meant it. I didn't
Right.
Nothing like this had ever happened, and
Right.
I was like, and so I just remember I looked at him and I was like, "No, I don't think that." And that was all that came out of my mouth. And I remember he put it down, and I just fell to the floor and I started crying. It was just a reaction. I didn't choose it, it just happened.
Yeah.
And he came up behind me and he picked me up by my hair and he started screaming in my face and told me I was selfish because he was the one hurting. And how dare I cry? I am so selfish. I'm making this moment all about me. And he started recording me. And our kids were in the house. And so I remember he was just like following me around the house recording me. And it was the weirdest thing ever. And at this point, I think I was still in shock. I never saw that coming. I never thought that that would happen in my lifetime. You see that happen in movies. You hear people talk about it. I never in my life thought that that would happen. And so I remember I was like, I don't know if I was like trying to take care of the kids. I don't know what I was doing, but I was just walking around the house. Well, at some point he got mad and he pushed me back into our bedroom and threw a drink at me, yada yada. In this interaction, he ended up hitting me in the side of the head, and then he climbed on top of me, on top of our bed, and started strangling me and started screaming in my face, "Why won't you let me love you?" And it is that moment is such a distinct moment in my mind. I don't know that if I paid someone millions of dollars that there is a way to get it out of my brain. It was the weirdest, like, most surreal outer body experience, and then the phrase, like, "Why won't you let me love you?" Like, what in the actual fuck?
Yeah.
Like, it was just so bizarre that it made no sense, and it's one of those looking back now that I do question because I'm like, "That sounds so crazy, how can that be real?" And at some point, he did get off, and I remember I locked myself in our bathroom because I just didn't know what to do. I knew I needed space between him and me, but I was scared. And I remember I was texting my mom at this point because I had some contact with her. And I remember there had been other times in our relationship where he had communicated to me, like, I will go down by police assisted suicide before I will surrender to anybody. And I believe that.
Yeah.
Like, I still believe that to this day. And so I remember telling, like, I was messaging my mom. I'm like, he hit me. I don't know what to do. Like, I was just in shock. Like, I think I was word vomiting and just saying, like, the most out of pocket things because I just didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what to do. And she's like, I'm calling the police. Well, at this point, he had taken our youngest, and she had to be like 2 or 3 at this point. She was little, so she doesn't remember any of it, thank God. But he took her into the gun room, and I could hear him telling her, like, "You're never gonna see mom again." I didn't know what his plan was. I didn't know what his thought process was. I knew I wasn't leaving without her. I think he knew I wasn't leaving without her. So I think that's why he took her into the gun room, and I think that's why I laid in the bathtub. I'm like, "What the hell do I do?" I didn't know what to do.
Are there other 2 kids in the house?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I was laying in the bathtub, and my oldest daughter, I don't know, she had to have been a teenager at this point. She just turned 18. So this was 2019. Math is hard. I don't know.
Yeah.
Old enough that she knows. I remember she knocked on the bathroom door. She's like, "I've packed some clothes. I'm ready to leave when you are." And I was like, "Please don't let him see it." Like, that was all I said to her. I was like, "Please don't let him see it." I don't even know how much time went by, and I remember my mom was like, "I'm calling the police," and I was begging her not to because I didn't know if that meant we were dying because you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of people judge me for that moment too because, well, why didn't you just let her call the police?
Yeah.
Well, I believe that he really,
You want to protect your kids.
and I do believe that he would have done something.
Yeah.
Just so that he could have been the victim in that moment. I think that that was his mindset.
Yeah.
Eventually, he told my oldest daughter to come and ask if I wanted anything from Walmart. It was really weird. She knocked on the door. She's like, "Dad wants to know if you want anything from Walmart." I was like, "Nope." And I still think it was a test. I don't know. But he left. And we had a second car. But in my mind, he was parked around the corner waiting for me to leave. And so I grabbed the kids and we ran out the back door and ran into my neighbor's backyard. And I called my mom and I was like, "Will you come get us?" And it was probably 10:30, 11 o'clock. It was dark. And I remember we went over to my mom's house and I texted him and I was like, "Hey, I think he got home and realized we weren't there probably." And I said, like, "We're at my mom's. We just need some space. That wasn't okay. I just need some time to think." He's like, "Come out and talk to me." And I was like, "I'm not coming out to talk to you." Well, the next morning he shows up and he's like, "Come out and talk to me. I'm calling the police." And I was like, "Okay." Like, I thought he was joking. I'm like, "What? Call the police. What are you going to say?" Well, he did. He called the police and he said that he was trying to take the kids to school and I wasn't letting them go to school. So I was like, "Okay, well, I'm just going to tell them what happened." Like, I didn't know what to do. I was still shocked and like I was numb. I didn't know what to do. So they send him home.
Did you tell them what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I just said, "Nope, that's not real. This is what happened." So the police go over to our home. We were in the city next to where we were living. And they were like, "This is what she said happened. Like, what do you have to say?" He's like, "Nope, I can prove that's not what happened. I have a video." And he sent them the video that he had recorded of me. And in that video, it showed him pushing me in a room. Thank goodness. So that was what got him arrested. What was so detrimental to me in that moment was I have no idea how the justice system works in this moment. I have no idea what my place is. I'm being told by his mom that I'm ruining his life and I'm doing this to him. And I'm going, "Well, I didn't ask for him to do this." Like, he was one that called the police. I was so confused. The victim's advocate for that city was new. And I remember asking her the question I kept asking, "What's my place in this? What's my place in this?" She kept telling me, "You're important." I'm like, "Well, no shit. Thank you. I know. But like, if I wasn't here, would this be happening?" That was my question because everyone kept telling me I was doing it. I didn't say arrest him. No one asked if I wanted to press charges. It just happened. So because of that, and I was living with my mom and dad, that is not something that is easy to do as an adult, especially when you don't really see eye to eye anyways. And now looking back, I don't blame them at all, but I can see as a parent, your natural reaction is to try and keep your kids close. When they're doing something that's scary, you want to keep them close so you can keep them safe. Well, that was what they were doing, but because I had just come from being controlled, I didn't want to be controlled anymore. And so I was rebelling against that hard. And I was like, if I'm going to be controlled here, I may as well go be controlled here.
Yeah.
And so it was about 6 weeks of just not super clear answers from the victim's advocate, not really understanding my place, wanting my family to work because I have children with this man. And at this point, we have 3 kids. That's not something that you just give up on, you know? And so I went back. And the second I went back, it was bad.
Well, is he just more angry now because of, everything that...
Well, and I did it to him, right? He's got all these people that are taking his side, his mom and all of his friends. How dare you ruin his life this way?
Yeah.
And just horrible, awful things where he's really paranoid because I don't think he wanted to face what he did. I don't think he was necessarily proud of it, but I also don't know. Sometimes I wonder if he remembers.
Yeah.
Because I remember making a comment to my mom one time. It would not matter if it was his 80-year-old grandma standing in front of him. If it was one of those moments, he would have done the same exact thing that he did to me, to anyone. And so part of me wonders, maybe he doesn't remember it. I don't know. Like, you always wonder, because I don't know, how do you do that to another person, especially when you say you love, you know?
Yeah.
So the second I went back, it was bad. He locked my keys in a safe. He monitored my phone. When I was at work, he would either take me to work and wait in the parking lot to make sure that I wasn't like leaving or going anywhere. He took my name off the bank account. So I was the only one working still, but I had no way to access money. And he would FaceTime me and make me show my work email to make sure I wasn't emailing anyone asking for help. And at this point, he claims that I caused him PTSD. So it was my job to stay up at night and heal him in whatever way he felt necessary, whether that be rubbing his legs or having sex with him or whatever the case was. He had me switch to an at-home job, and it was COVID, so no one was really questioning it. The kids were all pulled out of school, and I think that that was, again, because things were escalating and he just didn't want us talking, but at the time, COVID, so no one's even asking questions about it. I think I realized it's dumb because I watch the body cam footage now, and even the night that he was arrested, all I talk about is how much I love him and how I don't want to ruin his life.
Mm-hmm.
I think I used the word, I just want to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
I love him, but I just want to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
My love for him did not go away until I realized that he never really loved me. That never stopped, even in that moment. I think the only thing that helped me realize that year that I needed to leave was because I realized I was going to die.
Yeah.
I could tell that the interactions with him were escalating so much that there wasn't anything I could do to stop it, and they were so frequent.
Yeah.
Like, when the police officer asked me how many times was he physical with you in the last year, I could not put a number on it. There were times where it was like he would be saying things to me, and the emotional stuff was so hard to hear that I would say something knowing it would trigger something physical because that was easier for me to deal with than the words he was saying. And that, I think, I talk about a lot because I want people to understand that. I think people tolerate emotional abuse so much longer because there's no proof of it.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't hit me, so it's fine. But the emotional stuff is the stuff I still have nightmares about. It's not the punches. I remember all those. I have pictures of the bruises. I'm sure they hurt, but I don't remember those. I remember the words. I remember how my body felt. And it was me coming to the realization that I was going to die if I didn't leave. Like, that was what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked to leave a couple of times. It wasn't like, I don't know.
Well, you're being held hostage, it sounds like.
I couldn't sleep. I was not sleeping. I felt like a lunatic. I was insane. When I switched to the at-home position, he would come and sit next to me. He had a bed set up behind. So my shift was like a 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. shift or something like that. It was earlier. And we were down in our unfinished basement. And so he had a bed set up behind where my desk was. So he would sit there and like make sure I wouldn't talk to people or ask for help or do anything. And then we would go upstairs and I would have whatever other thing he expected me to do. And then it would just start over. Like, it was like Groundhog's Day. We never left the house.
Did the kids leave the house?
No.
And were the kids witnessing this
At this
physical
point,
abuse, or was
the
it hidden?
physical abuse, no. Well, I mean, kind of. They saw him like throw me down the stairs a couple of times. He locked me out of the house that year a couple of times. He would throw my stuff in garbage bags and throw them in the neighbors' garbage cans, and the kids would go help me get them. So they were seeing things like that, but they weren't necessarily seeing him be physical with me directly.
And what was their response? Did they just think it was normal?
I mean, normal-ish. That was just kind of all what we had done, and it evolved. Like, I mean, it evolved for me and it evolved for them, you know?
Yeah.
And I think we all kind of knew he was depressed. And talking to them now, I think my daughter really struggled with therapy after my oldest daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And her mindset was, I don't need it. I mourned him before we left him. And there was a lot of that. I felt that. I felt like the man that I married and the man that I loved is no longer walking this planet. Like, I can say that confidently. And I think we all kind of felt the shift when it happened. And so all of us kind of mourned that version of him. And I think we almost went numb to the other things that were happening because it was just a reaction to something that we didn't understand in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so the time that they saw it was the day that we went to jury trial for. That was December 27th, 2020. And it started in our bedroom. And I don't remember what started the argument. It was something stupid. And I watched him walk out of our closet And I was terrified because I knew all of our kids were in the house, and I had just so I tell the story, sorry, I don't know how I should share, but he had knocked me unconscious, and I woke up to him kneeling over the top of me, grinding his knuckle into my collarbone. And I remember I just crawled backwards into our walk-in closet, and he picked me up by my hair. He really liked doing that, and he started screaming, "How look at that bitch face. How would I love that?" And he threw me backwards, and I remember huddling into a ball, and I was just, like, holding my head, and I remember he just started, like, beating me, like, repeatedly, and I don't know that I could count how many times, but I remember having the thought, like, "This is the moment I die." And so when he was leaving the closet, and I knew our kids were out there, it was the biggest internal conflict because I knew going after him meant that I'm possibly dying, but not going after him meant he's now with my children in a severely mentally unstable state. So I went after him. He pinned me up against the wall and he dug his thumb into my eyes. And I could hear the kids behind him just begging him to stop. And it's like, how do you, I don't know how to put into words. If my kids were begging me to stop anything in that way, it would take me 0 seconds flat to stop. And I don't know how, as their dad, not only do you do that to someone that you love, but hear your children begging you to stop and you continue. A really hard moment. And at that point, I kind of knew everything had shifted. Like, they had seen it. It wasn't anything that I could, like, hide from them anymore. And he threw me backwards into the door where, like, they were all standing, and he went down our stairs. And I remember they were all standing crying, and again, I'm conflicted because do I go after him? Do I stay with them? But I didn't trust what he was doing downstairs, so here I go again, brilliant me, going after him. And I went downstairs, and I think he made some comment that I should just kill myself and do everyone a favor and all these horrible things. And again, all of that sucked, right? But it was like, it's those moments of like remembering the kids and knowing that I can't ever take that moment away from them. I can't take that vision away from them. I can't take away how they felt. I can't change that for them. And then to be told that I was ruining his life, like those are the things that I get really frustrated by because I'm like, okay, like screw you just a little bit, Interaction, he broke my phone. And again, none of us are leaving. We're not going to school. We're not doing anything. And so it took me about another week before he got mad. It was January 2nd, 2021. And he got mad, threw me out the door, yada yada, and it was long and complicated, and it took all day for us like going back and forth. But he finally was arrested that night, and it's mind-blowing for me to look at the body cam footage and listen to the words that I said and the mindset that I had at that time, because you would think that having someone beat you near daily and question whether you're going to live, you would think I would hate the human. I mean, I do, but you wouldn't know it in those videos.
Yeah. I think that's something, there's something to be said about that. And I think that's a struggle that a lot of people going through domestic violence right now, or even domestic violence survivors, can say is, the cycle of abuse is very ugly, but it's very real. And I feel like that's another thing that people don't understand, like, I'm sure you get it all the time. Like, why didn't you just leave? And it's like, man, if it was that easy, like, don't you think you would have done it?
Yeah.
But it's not that easy. And that's another thing that people don't get. There is a thing, it's literally called the cycle of abuse. You can Google it. You don't know what it is. And it's very real. And it takes someone to go through that maybe a million times to reach your limit and not go through it again. But it's not one of those things where it's like, you can't just be like, okay, like I'm not, it's not as easy as people think it is.
No, or the question, but what does he do? I hated that one because I'm like, if I knew what he did, if I could identify what he did, do you think I would have stayed in it as long as I did? Yeah.
But I think it's honestly the fact of like, you're afraid, right? You're scared. You have children with this person. And honestly, where are you going to go? What are you going to do?
I had cut off all family members. I had no access to a bank account. I knew I had a job. One thing that I wish I would have done, and I did talking on my podcast, I realized it. I wish that I would have lived on my own a little bit before I went with him, because I was with my parents and my parents taking care of me to then with him taking care
Yeah.
of me. But then the idea of leaving and doing it on my own felt so much more unrealistic
Yes.
because I never had.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have the confidence in myself because someone had beat it out of me, literally and figuratively, and all of these things. But then I never had done it, so it felt like something impossible.
Impossible, yeah. And I think there's just a lot to be said about that. Like for someone that's never gone through it. I mean, I haven't gone through that either, but I feel like what I've gone through, obviously, it's not the same, but I do get the question like, well, why didn't you just leave? Or why did you do this? Or why didn't you do that? And it's not that easy. But I feel like in situations with domestic violence, it's just thinking about like leaving and starting over. I mean, it must be hard and it must be
Terrifying.
a lot more scary than let me just go back home and deal with this, you know, like,
I knew what to
and
expect.
that's, it's crazy. Like, it sounds crazy, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, let me just go back and do this because I know what it's like. I know what's going to happen versus going through the unknown of,
Well,
what
not only
gonna
that,
happen.
but I talked to a lot of women and I did face this. This person, I'm able to direct their anger to me when I'm there. When I'm not there, if I leave and I divorce this person, okay, I'm safe, but I share children with him.
Yep.
I have to send my children back to him. And I get a lot of judgment. I talked about it on the Beyond the Monsters podcast. There was one time where he got physical with our son. That was the one and only time that he was physical with our children that I was present for, that my children have told me about. Maybe there's other times that they have not told me about. I don't believe there are, but the one and only time he got physical with our son, I didn't know that was the plan. I didn't know that was what he was doing. Otherwise, I probably would have stopped it, but there's a lot of judgment on me for allowing that to happen. Well, I didn't allow that to happen, but I think I was scared to take myself out of the situation because then I was no longer the buffer. I couldn't keep them safe and I didn't trust his emotional state. And that was something that I struggled with until our adoption took place. There was a protective order that was put in place for my children about 3 months after our divorce took place because of things that he did when they were going over there. But that is something that is very real for a lot of women, and I am so grateful. Grateful, I don't know if that's the right word. Grateful that he was such a piece of crap that he, you know what I mean? Like, that sounds dumb because I'm not grateful that that's the life we live, but I am grateful that my children don't have to go back and forth
Yes.
in that unstable environment. That I am grateful for because I don't know what our life would be if that was the case.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't even imagine the mental, the mind fuck that would have on you.
Well, and even doing
Like
what we
the-
did. So he was arrested January 2nd, 2021. It took us until February 1st and 2nd, 2022, I think. So it was over a year that it took us to get to jury trial. And it was me and my two oldest children that had to go and testify. I had to convince 6 or 8, I don't even remember how many people there were, that the worst day of my life happened behind closed doors where there's this other narrative that's completely opposite. And that's how it is. That's how it is all of the time, right? And I think it's hard because you know that every detail of that day is going to be scrutinized. And so I was so hyper focused on holding on to every moment of the worst day of my life that it made me so miserable and disassociated. And I mean, I just stayed in trauma. I couldn't, and I don't know that there was any way I could have done it otherwise. Like,
Yeah.
holding on to that and knowing that I was going to have to answer for that day, I wasn't going to do it any different. I wasn't going to back down, but it sucked.
Yeah.
And it kind of kept us all there. And we couldn't go to divorce until, because he was asking for 50-50 custody. And I was like, no, and innocent until proven guilty. So we had to wait for jury trial. So it took us a year and 8 months before we got divorced.
So what are you doing through that time? Who has the kids?
I do.
Okay.
So that was another thing that was really hard. And like, I think a lot of people don't really understand, custody was not set for us. So I left and I was required to tell him where we were at. And I was in an apartment. Well, he was driving our apartment complex. And I had a protective order, restraining order. I had all the things in place, and I had cameras out my window, and I would record him driving around. But they're like, we can't see his license plate. We can't prove it's him. And I'm like, okay. So I was just on edge all the time. And because custody was not set, I was told, if he has your kids and he takes them, we can't go take him from them because there's no custody set. So like, when my kids would walk home from school, if he stopped and picked up the two youngest, unless he willingly gives them back to me, we just constantly lived in fear. And I didn't want them to be scared of their dad. I already was kind of worried about that because of the narrative of his mom, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know the details of that. And so I was trying to be cautious and knowing that he really did make crappy decisions. And I talk about that. I'm grateful and not grateful that they saw things because it allowed me to talk to them about things that I wouldn't have normally. Because you're not going to go to your kid and be like, your dad beat me. That's not a conversation you're going to have. But because they saw it, it allowed us to kind of answer questions that I would have had to kind of leave unanswered until they got a little bit older. So I hate it. But because of that, that was kind of a blessing in disguise, I guess. But it took almost 2 years to finalize all this. So in that time, they allowed him Zoom calls with the kids. He was getting like, I think maybe once or twice a week for an hour or something like that. Right after divorce that weekend, I went to divorce asking for therapy reintroduction because the kids had testified in jury trial and not against him. That's what everyone says, right? But they just testified to what they saw, but that still was against him. So they're intimidated, they're scared. And the judge told me I was petty for asking for therapy reintroduction and that I needed to be a better co-parent. And I was like,
Are you serious?
on top of it, in that hearing, my amazing ex-husband was representing himself. He was his own attorney because he's a genius and he knows all this. And so he's representing himself and he called me to the stand. And I was like, this doesn't feel safe. I don't want to do it. I had not had. The judge allowed it. The judge said that my attorney was like, there's an active protective order. And the judge was like, there's a bailiff here. She's safe. So I had to go sit on the stand and let him stand right in front of me and ask me any question that he felt necessary because he was
right.
It was awful. It was so unfair and disgusting and a moment I will continue to talk about forever because I feel like judges need far more training. That human knew every trigger that I had and I had just been told I was petty for asking for therapy, so I'm already on edge about every reaction I'm having, every word I'm saying because this judge thinks I'm petty, and now my ex-abusive husband is allowed to question me on the stand and I'm being evaluated as a mother and co-parent.
Wow.
It was awful.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. And the judge was like, nope, he can go with them this weekend. The kids can go with them this weekend. So I think we had our divorce on like a Wednesday. I had to send all 3 kids for the entire weekend that weekend with nothing.
Gosh.
And I was like, that would make me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
After not seeing someone for 2 years.
Did they?
They were all a little uncomfortable, but at that point, none of us really understood if we had a choice or not. It was all, we were all in shock.
Yeah.
I mean, they knew he was found guilty at jury trial, like that, they were a part of. They knew he was sentenced to 28 days in jail.
28 days.
28 days. That's what he got. 28 days in jail and 30 days house arrest.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, you didn't have a job. What kind of punishment was house arrest? Like, that was stupid. So for holding me prisoner for a year and almost killing me, you got 28 days, which I was told he probably won't get anything. So I was like, okay. The system is broken.
Oh yeah, I can go on and on and on about
right.
that.
It's a whole different time. Well, and again, I just don't think
Like,
if all of the people I talk to, abusive tendencies are not unique. I would even go far enough to say that because listening to the episode that you had with your friend and all of the things that you guys talked about and all of like the emotions that you had and all of the feelings, I could relate to 95% of them. And so I don't think that abusive tendencies are unique. And so if we can all identify that, if we can all see it, then why can't the justice system and why can't we figure out how to fix it? Because I know I'm not smart enough, but I can see it.
yeah.
And it just seems like at that point, it's a money game.
It is. I had someone on my podcast the other day, and we were kind of talking about that, the justice system and how it just sucks. And she made a really good comment, and she said, they only care about 2 things, your time and your money.
Yeah.
And that's it. And unfortunately, that is very true.
My husband, my amazing, incredible husband. Now, I guess because he always says it's our money, but he works his ass off so that I can stay home and be a mother to our children, which they need. Any kid who has been through severe trauma needs someone who is there with them. Working full time and having kids that have been through severe trauma is a really hard situation for kids to be in. And so I am severely grateful that I am in the situation that I am now. But because of him, we were able to get my 3 children adopted. And I think it is asinine that we spent, I think it was just over $10,000 to adopt my very own children.
Wow.
Once I grew. and care for on a daily basis. I haven't gotten child support in months. That was not a thing that I got from him. I never got help. If I did, it was random. It was like a $38 check here, $117 here. It was never consistent. And so to not only care for these kids and feed them and clothe them and try and get them back into sports and life and friends, I have to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to adopt my very own children.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's dumb.
It's so ridiculous.
So I'm grateful to be where I am now, but it was not an easy journey.
Yeah. So I do want to talk about that just for a minute. When did the jury trial and all that, when was that over?
So February 1st and 2nd, 2022 was jury trial. And so he was found guilty that day. There was 5 counts that he was found guilty for. And then I think sentencing was probably about a month later.
Okay.
And he had like 2 weeks to surrender.
Okay.
And he did that, whatever. He tried to get out the whole time. It was dumb. All of that happened. And then it was like August of 2022 where I got divorced. Like that was when our divorce was final.
Okay.
And then that weekend, the kids went with him.
Okay.
And then January of 2023 was when the protective order or restraining order, one of them went in place. We got
For all of you.
for the kids.
Okay.
So I had my own separate one, but then one of them we applied for and we got denied. We got told that the fear of abuse is not abuse. And I was like, okay. So again, if I've learned nothing, I have learned the justice system is a giant pile of loopholes.
Mhm.
And if you get told no in one way, you find another way to get there because there is one. So we applied for the other one and that one was approved. And I think that just made it hard enough for him that he didn't care to fight anymore.
So did the kids tell you they didn't want to go with him, or why did you do that? Or was it just because you knew who he...
There were a couple things happening in the house. That was the big one, but there were other things that the kids were telling me, like there wasn't food in the house.
Okay.
My oldest would text me and she's like, there's nothing to eat and they're not coming out of their bedroom and I don't know what to do. And my husband now would be like, well, I'll DoorDash you guys food. And she's like, no, he'll be mad. Don't do it.
Yeah.
And so they were scared. So it was just little things like that. But then there was this pinnacle moment, if you will, in January. And it was best for the kids, but it was hard. It was scary and just none of us really knew what it meant. And I would say a couple months later, he called our attorney and was like, I want to give up my parental rights. Her new husband can adopt the kids.
So when did you meet your husband? Your now husband.
So I met him, it was probably like August of 2021 for the very first time.
Okay.
So I got a job working at the airport, at Provo Airport, and I was an office manager for a flight school, and he was the assistant chief flight instructor for another flight school based out of Provo Airport.
Okay.
And so we would see each other in passing, and I remember there was one time I was like, oh, he's super cute, but I social media stalked him and he had a girlfriend. And at this point, I was like not into dating. Dating in general was scary. I was like, absolutely not.
Right.
And so it was not anything on my radar. I had been guilted into like feeling like being a mom was a bad thing. And I had felt so bad for not giving my kids the mom they deserved that I wasn't willing to sacrifice that version of myself for anybody. So no one in my mind was going to date a mom with 3 kids who was not going to put them as a priority. You know what I mean? And I was always very clear that they've been through enough. I was done with that. I was like, okay, he was cute, but we just kind of saw each other. Well, about a year later, I did my first candlelight walk. My divorce was final. All of those things were happening. And I did a photo shoot for a motorcycle club that came to walk. And he commented on the pictures and he was like, those are really cool. Like, why are you working at a flight school? And I was like, that is a complicated story. And so we started talking. And this was probably our anniversary, our date anniversary is October 20th. That was the first time he messaged me.
Uh-huh.
So it's coming up. So we started talking and very quickly I could tell I felt very safe with him, which was very rare for me. I didn't feel safe with very many people, if anybody.
Yeah.
He was a firefighter and a pilot at the time and had been a firefighter for 18 years. And I think that kind of made him equipped to handle the trauma that we had been through. Because I was able to kind of tell him the darkest parts of my brain and it didn't shock him. He didn't ever make me feel uncomfortable. He had struggled with issues with his dad growing up. And so that was something that he was very good with my kids. He could relate to them and kind of hold space for whatever feeling they had in the moment. And he never made us think that we had to feel a certain way at any time. And I remember one of the things when we very first started dating, we started coming over here. I was living with a friend at the time, and it wasn't a super great situation. She was not the healthiest of humans. And I had told her multiple times, you remind me of my ex-husband. She was him. And I think sometimes too, like after being in an abusive relationship, you draw those people
Yeah.
to you again. I did. And I think that that was almost a good thing for me because I faced the parts that I was scared of with someone I wasn't attracted to.
Right.
It was a female. It kind of empowered me in a sense. It wasn't romantic relationship. It was, I don't know. So I did face very similar things. She was very narcissistic, very self-centered. She was my boss at work. My world revolved around her world functioning. And I knew how to manage that because I had just come from that. It wasn't hard. And I kind of fell back into it because that was what I knew. But when we started coming here, so he owned this house when we were dating, and my kids, we would come over and we would just make dinner and play games. And it was just us. We didn't have the friend. We didn't have her daughter. And I loved them, but it was nice just to be us.
Yeah.
And then the kids started saying, like, do we have to go back? Can we just stay here? And I was like, well, we have school. Like, we've got to go back. And it was probably one of the first times that we had come over here. And his friend worked at a bed company, and he went and bought beds for all of the bedrooms for the kids so that they had a place to sleep when we came over here. Like, I didn't ask. I didn't say anything about it. I didn't say, like, the kids are uncomfortable. Maybe we have, like, he just did it. We all just very quickly felt very safe. And he just kind of stood by us through all of it. And when my ex called and was like, he can adopt them, he was like, heck yes, I'll adopt them. And so it was just,
I love that.
history from there. Now we have 2 more humans and chaos all the time.
Well, I'm glad to see you getting the love that you deserve.
Thank you. I didn't think it was real.
Yeah.
I didn't have all of the tools that I needed to be in an actual relationship, and I didn't have someone that was patient enough for me to learn them with them. And so I'm grateful to be where I am.
Yeah, it's very beautiful to have that. I feel like I can say the same about Kevin. Like, I just, coming from my relationship with Eric, which was very, like, I know Eric was a very great man, and I always say that, but obviously addiction was the third person in our relationship, which wasn't very fun.
No.
So I feel like Kevin is, like, I'm hearing you talk about your husband and I just smile because it literally reminds me of Kevin. And it's just so nice to be properly loved and like knowing you're so safe and having someone that is just so genuine.
Yeah.
Like, just really loves you, and not just you, but like your kids, clearly. Like,
well, and like
they're his kids.
Yeah.
Now they're.
It's always so funny because, like, I don't even know. My daughter says something, like, my daughter will make a joke and he's like, I'm on your birth certificate now. And like, until they just make jokes. And it's just so funny, like, to watch their relationship and watch him be so patient with whatever emotion they feel. And I think that that is beautiful.
Absolutely.
I am just so grateful for the man that he is and the life that we have and the things that we've gone through to make us the people that we are. Because I know that I wouldn't have the ability to love him the way that I do if I hadn't had taken the time to work on myself and really figure out, like, okay, communication scared me. I was scared to make mistakes. I was scared to do all of these things. And I think it's hard to heal those parts of yourself too. You talk about healing them, but then when you face it with someone that's so different, and you're not always going to find someone that's going to meet you with that patience and love.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. I agree. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to sit with me.
That was so fun.
It was really fun.
I hope I made sense.
You did. You did. Yeah, your story is just very inspiring and sad and beautiful and all the things.
Thank you.
I do have one more question for you. What is something you would say to someone out there going through what you went through, like in the midst of a domestic violence relationship, and they are just, thinking the same thing you're thinking? I'll never get out of this. I'm gonna die before I get out of this.
I think there's a couple things. I think that you do get to the point where you feel completely hopeless and like there is nothing else. I remember sitting in one of my boss's offices and I was like, I'm never going to own a house. I'm never going to do anything. It all just felt so big and so overwhelming. Once I removed the people that made me doubt myself, once I removed him mainly because he was constantly making me question every decision I made and everything I did, I realized that my own decisions were not bad. And choosing myself was not selfish. That was something that I always really believed. I believed that if I took time for myself or if I thought about me before someone else, that made me selfish. And I know now that that is not real. And anyone who really loves you wants you to think about yourself first because that's what they're doing too. No one understands you the way you do, so it's your job to choose you first. I think one other thing that I really wish I would have understood is no one needs to give you permission to leave. If it's bad enough for you to feel uncomfortable and unhappy and unsafe and you know you don't like it, leave. Obviously try. I'm not saying give up on marriage. That's not what I'm saying at all, but you don't need someone to validate how horrible it is. You don't need someone to tell you, yes, this is abuse. And emotional abuse is worse. I will say it every time, and I have lived through both, so I feel qualified to say both.
Yeah.
I feel like the emotional stuff is worse. Do not write that off. That is abuse. Leave. It doesn't get better. It doesn't go the other direction.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much for that. And thank you guys for hanging out with us. And if you want to continue to be a part of these conversations, make sure you like, share, subscribe, do all the things. And don't forget, just for today, keep going.